in your career, did any of the agencies, corporations, banks, whatever, have a code of ethics or a value statement or a mission statement? And would it be something you would turn to in crisis?
Mission statements, unfortunately, I've been quoted as saying mission statements were developed by the plastics industry so that they could put them in small little blocks and put them on your desk. And that unfortunately in many corporations, that's as far as the mission statement or the values got. Because they were written, they weren't written for real people. They were written for consumption, and again, they fit in a glass block. And I don't think values or mission statements fit in a glass block. Most of the time, it comes from the people themselves. I mean, you look at the Arthur Page Society and the principles for the Arthur Page Society. There's almost no principle there that talks about the corporation or the organization. It's all personal. Mm-hmm. And it's your personal reputation that drives a company, or the reputation of the chairman, the reputation of the reputation of the person that's out selling a product, the reputation of the person who's in United Airlines in the guts of a plane looking for a small piece of rust. It's those are where your values are, and they're generally personal values. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a great fan of mission statements. I'm a great fan of values. But when they're values of personal values, I'm not sure corporations can have values.
So Kurt, what's the role of the economic bottom line in ethical decision making?
Well, the economic bottom line obviously has great importance, because if the organization doesn't survive, all of the stakeholders lose. I mean, it's the constant question that comes up on your three stakeholder groups, your shareholders, your employees, and your customers or consumers or clients, or whatever they happen to be. And traditionally, we thought about talking to them differently because they had different needs. And the truth of the matter is they don't really have different needs. The truth of the matter is if the customer doesn't believe in us, if we don't provide a good product to the customer, and the customer doesn't accept that product and buy that product and think we're an ethical company to buy the product from, because today people are voting with their feet. They know about us. They didn't know about us before. All the shareholders want is the customers to be happy with us. All the employees want is the customers to be happy with us, because if the bottom line isn't there, the shareholders lose, the employees lose, and the customers lose. So the bottom line is very important, but it doesn't drive ethical decisions. I mean, that goes back, I think, to whether we're talking about corporate ethics, which again, I'm not sure how corporations have ethics, because they're made up of individual people with individual needs. I mean, when you look at some of the major missteps that companies have made, they have made them based on incentive plans provided by the company. The companies incented the wrong things, or they didn't have stops to prevent them from going too far in sales. I mean, and you can look at one crisis after another. So we incent occasionally bad behavior by asking someone to sell too much, or to sell it in the wrong form, or to not tell us when something went wrong in the production. But it comes down to individuals. So it's a matter of personal values, I believe. Everyone tries to define PR, and tries to, when somebody says, so what do you do? You know, what is PR? I've come up with two definitions in all of these years. The first one is local, because I spent most of my life in Chicago. The Chicago Police Department have on the side of their vehicles to serve and protect. It's on the patches. And I've always thought PR people should have a patch that says we produce and protect. Because what we do is we either do things that produce revenue, or we do things that protect revenue. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of my, if you had to put a shoulder patch on. The other one is just more fun, and that is, and I think Arthur Page would totally agree with the definition of PR, is finding a theory to fit the facts. Not trying to spin facts or tell somebody else, but finding a context around what someone has done, rightly or wrongly. And I think that's sort of where we get with Arthur Page. It's I think he had a good story well told. Was, I think, probably the quote that I love the most from Arthur Page, because it has everything to do with the story. We're supposed to tell it well. But frankly, what's come to is, as the power and as more and more people are at the center of the action, not just at the table, but at the planning sessions in companies, it's a matter of creating the story and then telling it. And it used to be the whole idea was just sort of tell the story well. So I think this profession is moving in the absolute right direction.
Now, you have had some experience in the classroom with some public relations students. In the business college or in
the graduate school.
In the graduate school, okay. How are those students, are they prepared to make these difficult ethical decisions that they're going to be faced with? Or do they have the tools that they need to handle different situations? You taught at the graduate level, is that correct? No undergrad?
Well, I've done some undergrad as well.
Okay.
Not everybody should come into public relations. First off, many people don't really understand what we do, and they don't understand the ethics around it. And I think the ethics are a basic part of it. You know, everyone probably in the Arthur Page Society that has been very successful at one time or another had to bet their job. They've had to tell somebody no. They've had to tell somebody that's the wrong thing to do. And that somebody normally is a fairly important person in the organization, and they know they're putting their job on the line when they do it. And sometimes they've been fired for the right reasons, and they've gone on and been successes someplace else. So, number one, if you're coming into this profession, I think students have to understand it's a risky profession in a lot of ways. One, it's a very relationship profession. You know, you end up with a very tight relationship with the CEO and others, and we see in our profession the CEO leaves, the PR person leaves. I mean, and the second thing, it's risky because you have to tell people that you have to tell truth to power. And that's not always easy, and it's generally not easy when you have a mortgage to pay. So I think, number one, I think the profession, the academics are not necessarily explaining what we do in the context of where you're going to end up in the profession, not where you start in it. I've had two experiences. Undergrad, I just visited my old college, and I sat down with the professors and talked to a lot of the students. And one of the questions I asked the professors is, are you teaching financial relations to your PR students? And she said, well, no. And I said, well, then you're not preparing them well. If they can't read a balance sheet, if they don't know how that company makes money, they can't do their job. I got a nice email from her some weeks later saying I've made a deal with the business professors, and we're doing some cross-training. So I think, number one, I think undergrad, I'm not sure we're preparing, in many places, we're preparing students for what's happening today in our business. I'm not sure it's grown as quickly as the profession has. Graduate, which I taught at Northwestern, we generally had students who had worked for 2 or 3 years in the profession before they came in. So they understood what was necessary. They had seen really good people at work, and what they needed was more knowledge. They needed an experience transfer, if you will, and which is what I was able to do. I mean, doing this for 40, 50 years, you make some mistakes, you do some right things, and if you understand which one was right and which one was wrong, you can tell somebody else not to make the same one. But I think the issue from an education standpoint is at the undergraduate level. I'm not sure it's keeping up with the profession.
You mentioned telling truth to power. In the year 2000, you conducted a pre-seminar survey of Page Society members and discovered that there are 3 levels of public relations leadership. At that time, when you got the results back, you were kind of disappointed that so many members were still reporting to staff or operating officers and not to their CEOs. Could you talk about your findings? And again, you're hitting this, but the current state of that counseling relationship.
Well, we did this survey, and basically what it came out with is there were 3 groups, but if you kind of cut them into 2, there were a group who were doing pretty well. They were reporting to the top people. They were at the table. And there were a group that weren't. And the group that wasn't sort of got up every morning and put on a hair shirt. And they whined a lot about they didn't get any respect, they didn't get to report to the right people. And basically what came out of that was both groups had created their own environment. Because the group that was reporting up believed in this profession, and they believed what we did had great value, and were willing to put it on the line. They were willing to go to someone, if we're talking about produce or protect, and saying, I can increase the business of this organization because I can increase its reputation, I can increase what people think about us, or I can protect it, or I can move that product, whatever it may be, whatever piece of business we're talking about within the profession. The other group didn't even really believe in itself or believe it could do that. And I hate to be gross, but I mean, CEOs could smell it on them, that they didn't have that confidence. Because when you looked at the results, the people who were whining that they didn't get respect probably didn't deserve it. And again, it comes, I think, from confidence. I mean, we're talking about ROI today in our profession. We're talking about actually putting numbers to it. The advertising profession for years puts out an ad, then they do their own research and say, look, everybody loves it, and look how much our sales are going up. We can do the same thing. We could do the same thing tomorrow morning, and have been doing the same thing with ROI. But there's a group of the people in this business that don't believe that you can measure what we do. Chairmen like that. The other thing that I think is a phenomenon in our business, and it goes to this 2 groups. The group that is reporting to CEOs, the CEOs of most companies understand what we do and don't need for us to prove it to them. They understand it intuitively, that if we do this, we show a good reputation, we protect the reputation, that means money to them. It means they're going to make money or save money or whatever. Downward in an organization, there's not the same confidence and understanding and support for what we do. And they want data. The head of marketing, if you're reporting to the head of marketing, or the head of the CFO, wants data from the person reporting to them. They want return on investment. Now you can create that, and there's academics who have figured out ways to do that. But that's really the difference. It has more to do with the difference in where you report and the people who actually end up reporting here and people are reporting here. And that's basically what the survey said.
You've received a lot of awards and honors. Can you identify which one was most important to you and tell us why?
I mean, clearly the most important honor I ever got was to be in the Hall of Fame for Arthur Page. I mean, it's your own peers telling you that you know, not necessarily that they liked you or didn't like you, but that you did good work, and that you had given something back to the profession. You had created a body of knowledge. Hands down, Arthur Page Society. The most interesting stuff is, as an old retread, silver-backed PR guy, to end up on a couple of boards, as I am now at the New York Stock Exchange at FINRA, amazes me. I'm constantly amazed that people who have a depth of experience in these fields, I mean, people that used to be the head of the SEC and the presidents of colleges and all these other people on the board, would let an old retread in and actually listen. So it says something about the profession. I'm not sure it says much about me. I happen to be standing in the right place when some of these things happened. But there are other people in the profession that are getting that kind of recognition, which historically we never had. There weren't a lot of PR people on boards or other than charitable boards. So I think it says something about what this profession is and where it's going. But, you know, Arthur Page Society, how do you not think that's pretty cool?
You've mentioned some things. Looking back over your career, for what accomplishments are you most proud? And you know, why?
Okay. The thing that I think all of us should be most proud of in a long career is sort of what we've done as far as mentoring other people. I mean, I go to the Arthur Page meetings, and I look around, and I can count 7 to 10 people in that place who have worked for me, who are now running their own organizations, probably doing better than I ever would with those companies. But I had something to do with them doing that. I get emails from students who 10 years ago I had in a class at Northwestern who were saying, something just happened and I did what you told me and it worked. I mean, there's nothing better than that. That's what it's really all about. It's the giving back and creating something for the profession through real people. There are little things that have happened in companies that you take great pride in. I mean, once at United Airlines, for example, I had been there about a month and a half and got a call from 2020. They said, we'd like to do a story. Planes, basically at that time, there were a series of accidents. Mm-hmm. The issue was planes are falling out of the air. We'd like to come out and look at your safety session out in San Francisco, where you do maintenance and how your safety works. And I went into the president and he said, he says, we do safety, we don't talk about it. And I said, Dick, somebody's got to do this story because people are getting worried about planes. And basically, it was a bet your job. So we had 2020 came out, and we made two arrangements with 2020. We said you can come out to the San Francisco base, but you have to spend a week there. You can't come in for a day. Mm-hmm. You got to spend a week. You got to really understand it. And before you leave, you've got to interview with the in-house United Airlines employee publication as to what you found and how you felt about our safety. Mm-hmm. They came out, they spent a week. And it was a no-brainer because the safety out there, you would see mechanics with a dental pick inside a 747 picking at a spot of rust that you couldn't see. I mean, you felt so safe after going through it. And I figure so they spend a week there. They interview. Barbara Walters comes out to do the final story, who, how should I say this? Barbara Walters, as a journalist, is a great actor. They plugged a earphone in her ear, and a guy stood in the back and told her what to ask, and she would ask, and one of our people would return. Well, anyway, the show started with Barbara Walters sitting in an empty plane saying, plane's been falling out of there. We've asked every airline if they would show us their safety and their maintenance base, and everybody turned us down except United Airlines. And I must tell you, I have never felt so safe in my life. I wondered whether I had a job the next day. The show went on at 9 o'clock at night in Chicago, and I sat there in my house telling Kathleen we may not have a job tomorrow morning. At 9:10, the phone rang, and it was the head of the San Francisco customer relations, because all of the reservation stuff moves west at night. He says, our phones have lit up. He says, everybody's changing their reservations at any cost from any airline to ours. I hung up the phone and said, we have a job. Yeah. But, again, it was a good story, well told. Mm-hmm. But you occasionally have to take a deep breath and be able to tell it. But, as one little thing, that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned about the importance of mentoring, and it's just very refreshing because I hear that from the Page Society members a lot, that giving back is extremely important to them, and that's so good to hear.
That's how this profession grows, on the backs of the people who have done it before, done right. We're not a profession that has, like lawyers, I hate to sort of bring them up, but who have a lot of books, and that's your basis of knowledge. Your basis of knowledge is what's coming out of something that somebody did yesterday. Or something that somebody's going to do tomorrow. And it's on the backs of these professionals that this profession grows and the people within it grow.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered?
Give me a second.
Sure.
The famous journalistic question, what haven't I asked you?
Yeah, gets
most of the interesting answers in the whole world, right? I can't think of much you haven't. I mean, you've covered everything I'd want to pass on.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear how you value the Page Society because, you know, although we're not directly affiliated, we're associated somewhat with the Page Society, and if it would not have been for the Ed Blocks, Larry Fosters, and Jack Cotons, you know, the Page Center at Penn State would not be in existence. So it's always good to hear. It's wonderful to talk with everybody from the society. So thank you so much for spending some time with us. I really
Well, thank you
appreciate
for
it.
asking. I mean, it's.
Especially for the second time.
I mean, as I said before, I mean, I've had an amazing life, and the fact that anybody cares is just wonderful. I mean, it's just, where else can you know, somebody actually say, gee, we actually think you have something important to say, and
Right.
we're going to record it. My God, this is great. Thank you very much.